Yeah, ma'am. Just set up
Uh,
multi-cam.
Hi, Karan. It's so nice to see that you're ending your project and you've actually come to a conclusion with um, the project. Would you want to just describe the project a bit before we start on the official presentation, if I can so say?
Okay. So we started off with the project is a single goal that we wanted to realize what were the impacts based on COVID on the BSE Sensex, the Bombay Stock Exchange of India. So COVID had a vast variety of impacts on everything that we do all around us with respect to our home life, to jobs, to everyday normal resources and their distribution. So it turned everything all around as the pandemic began. So the whole goal was to realize how did this affect our stock market.
And
So I took
you are an engineer, so just tell us a bit about your background and how data science is one of the things you do.
okay. So my graduation was in engineering, mechanical engineering, and from there on, I had always been interested in technology and things that are advancing, so in new concepts. So during one of those phases, after I completed my engineering, I discovered data science, which is now vastly growing. And basically, it allows us to take the latest data, which is being generated every second in vast amounts, and make meaningful decisions that can be used to optimize or grow through vast potential.
Correct.
So
Uh,
that is what made me jump into data science.
well, you've used quite a few techniques here. So you've followed the Decova and I process. You've ensured that you've web scraped some data, extracted data from the online platforms. You've used Python and statistical techniques to ensure that can you to explore if you can create statistical models around the data. So I
Yeah.
think your presentation will be pretty exciting. And with this, I will request you to take over the presentation. Yeah, Karan.
Hello everyone. My topic is did the BSE Sensex get affected by coronavirus related death news on the internet in India? So the main objective here was to study the impact and understand what kind of factors affected our BSE Sensex market, mainly pertaining to coronavirus and its related news that was covered on an online platform. And additionally, what other variables affected the Sensex and whether what can we look forward to. The time frame considered for this project was from the 1st of January till the 15th of September.
Correct. So the data you took was from the 1st of January till the 15th of September, right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So the main additional factors that we considered in terms of data were the primary BSE Sensex data of the year 2020 in the given time frame, that is 1st January till 15th September, and additionally the BSE Sensex data of the previous year, 2019. Also, to compare it with the changes and differences in the US market, we considered the popular equivalent of BSE Sensex, that is Dow Jones Index, from the year 2019 to 2020. Additionally, to see how not only the market but other common commodities were affected, we considered gold and we took the data for the year 2020 and 2019. With respect to COVID, we took our primary data from COVID India, which consists of the total number of cases, the death rate, the active cases, and the recovery for the time period of 1st January till 15th September. Additionally, the news related to the coverage of COVID was taken from Google Trends news query section. Google Trends allows us to pick up the latest interests for specific queries based on their web search or their YouTube or news sections. So, considering the news sections, we pulled in the data for two queries, the coronavirus query and coronavirus related deaths. Additionally, further information was considered from Wikipedia and miscellaneous sources. One of the major challenges that were faced
One
here
minute,
was,
Karan, the date. Yeah.
so this is the main summary of all of the data. As you can see, like we started out with BSE Sensex 2019 and 2020 data, followed by DJIA 2019 and 20, gold commodity 2019 and 20. So this covers all of our financial and market-based data. Following that is our COVID data. So primarily we have considered the data from COVID.org using the site covidindia.org, which is affiliated with the MHFW, that is Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Additionally, the news data was taken from Google View and the links has been added. There were two categories considered: the coronavirus news and coronavirus death related news queries. And following that, all of the data was compiled and merged into two separate final data sets. One considering all of the financial data along with the coronavirus news, and the second considering all of the financial data along with the coronavirus death news and its death case counts. So
So
here you can
the combined, the data you showed.
yeah. So here you can see is the death news main combined data. So it start out with the primary column as the date, and following that is open, high, low, and close, which represents OHLC chart, a very famous representation for understanding of stock market based data. The following represents the BSE market. Along with that, we have following that open, high, low, and close of Dow Jones index, again represented in the form of OHLC chart. Now, one of the popular variables or indicators used for analysis in OHLC is the OHLC average, which is what I have considered in this case. So the variable generated by me is BSE OHLC average, which is the target variable in this case, and DJIA OHLC average. Following that is our goal data, as can be seen here, which talks about the instrument segment commodity, and finally the total value, which represents the market day-to-day value of gold and its changes. Following that is the location-based state-wise data of COVID cases, in this case death cases. So the data which was presented to us from COVID India.org mainly consisted of district-wise separations, as is generally being recorded all over India in terms of COVID cases. However, to prevent curse of dimensionality, as the total districts and the data compiled was about 1,628 rows, I decided to only consider state-wise data, and hence the state-wise COVID cases representations per each day are presented. Coronavirus deaths, the queries. So the values here represent the search interest based on Google's algorithm, which initially, as can be seen, started out with zero, as people were unaware, and gradually begins to proceed as the corona cases enter India. The combined data. Now, one of the major challenges here faced was while procuring the data. With example, the news data, we had considered multiple popular sources such as Times of India, Economic Times, and the challenge we faced with such sources was that while we could get a numerous coronavirus article, the amount of coverage presented on a daily or a monthly basis was not readily available. And unless we spent months just scraping them individually and manually setting up an algorithm to sort it, it was not feasible. Thankfully, the Google News platform and its trends helped us in this regard by giving us a compilation of all of their queries. So the data is all combined on the basis of date time data in a time series format. The primary date time is considered for the BSE Sensex, and accordingly, all of the other data sets, which is Dow Jones Index, gold commodity, news, and COVID cases, are combined with the date of BSE Sensex. In the case where there is missing dates due to separation in the market holidays and etc., imputation was considered. So the missing values arising due to this were dealt in two ways. The financial missing values, since it was time series based data, was used using backward fill or previous observation or forward observation. So both the techniques were applied to fill in the gap between the time series. Similarly, for coronavirus cases and search queries, since the cases began after 30th of January, prior to that there was no data present. Hence, automatically any missing values and as such have been given the value of 0 to represent no cases and data. Our desired variable in this case was average OHLC, that is the average of open, high, low, and close, which represents the stock market. Open representing the starting of the stock market for the day, the high representing the local high for the day, the low representing the local low for the day, and close the ending price when the market closes for the day. So the average of these is considered for as a daily measure to represent the market. And the BSE Sensex average OHLC is considered a dependent variable for this research. So market data. So market data was primarily distributed into two, the OHLC charts and gold commodity. As previously shown below in the data booklet, I had 6 data sets. Each of the 3 types represented were pertaining to 2 years, 2020 and 2019. The BSE Sensex had date, open, high, low, and close, along with the additionally introduced variable of average OHLC, whereas Dow Jones Index had date, open, high, low, close, and volume, along with adjusted closing. Now, in this case, adjusted closing did not differentiate with our close during this time period. Hence, to prevent unnecessary data that was dropped. Missing values amongst OHLC chart. The BSE data contained no missing values, and since its dates were a primary variable, hence there were no gaps considered in the time series. Whereas for the case of Dow Jones, on the dates where it did not interact or differentiated from BSE Sensex, the imputation methods were considered to fill up the time series, that is forward fill and backward fill. Gold commodity. Gold commodity contained primary variable of average daily turnover in lakhs and total value in lakhs. Along with that, the primary date instrument, segment, commodity, and traded contract lots were present, along with a blank column named unnamed 7. Since average daily turnover and unnamed 7 did not contain any data, they were dropped. And as the data in segment and commodity mainly represented that it belonged to gold commodity, it was not considered. Any missing data present in gold commodity was also again filled using the popular time series method of backward imputation.
Okay, cool. Um, so, yeah, the visualization, Karandeep, maybe you can share the link to your visualization PPT, which we will put with the presentation.
Okay.
Yes.
And the COVID and COVID-19 news data. So the COVID data was presented in a straight and district-wise format. As I showed earlier, to prevent curse of dimensionality, we only considered the state-wise data. And any missing values considered under them were taken as a zero due to the absence of COVID cases during certain times. The visualization link will be attached along with the PPT. Coming to our analysis phase. So after the data was combined and merged along with all the preliminary cleaning and pre-processing completed to establish and realize the relationships between different independent and dependent variables, correlation was done. Primarily Pearson's correlation was considered. Once correlation was done and it was sorted out, the top 10 ranking for both coronavirus cases and corona death cases were considered. For the primary coronavirus cases, as you can see, the Dow Jones had a heavy impact and direct correlation in a positive direction, whereas its volume had a negative correlation. And similarly, you can see that the coronavirus cases location itself also had a minor impact, starting from zero point 0.3 to 0.29 and onwards in a positive direction. The COVID death cases had a much larger correlation and impact. As can be seen, the primary value goes to Dow Jones market, which has the highest impact, followed by the unknown total, which represents the COVID cases which have not been attributed to any specific statewide citizens, but the people coming under the whole country's jurisdiction as a whole, which may consist from people who are travelers to migrants, followed by Rajasthan, Telangana, and Madhya Pradesh, some of the leading states in coronavirus cases and deaths. Once correlation was done and it was decided that the death cases had a higher impact. Hence, that was the data set that was considered for regression analysis and prediction of the stock market. So, four different regression models were considered. We started with the linear regression, and that led to a R value of 1, R square value of 1, and overfitting. So following that, we implemented normalized linear regression, which gave the R square of 0.93 and a root mean square error of 1092. To further reduce the curse of dimensionality, as we had around 52 variables, we applied ridge and lasso regression with alpha values of 0.01. So among those, lasso gave us a better output with a higher R square and a lower root mean square error. In an effort to further find a more optimal algorithm, we tried ensemble learning random forest regressor. So random forest regressor, they gave us the highest R square at 0.96 with a low root mean square error value of 800. So that was considered the best solution. And also it represented the linear method of growth for the BSE Sensex. And with the help of the correlation, we could conclude that the Dow Jones Index, its OHLC value, and coronavirus cases and exposure had a significant impact. Insights. So there were a number of factors considered. So primary insights that we could locate at the end were that the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is the market index of US, United States of America, has a significant relation and impact on BSE Sensex. Following which, considering the gold commodity, we realized that it was inversely proportional at a correlation of minus 0.3. The liquidity present in India is shown through this because while the BSE Sensex rates dropped, the gold rates increased, which showed a shift in the investor's perspective and perhaps moving towards the safer considered commodity, which is gold, as comparison to normally considered riskier Indian stock market. Coronavirus death news and its impact was observed with a high rating and correlation of zero point 0.9 and above. Similarly, the coronavirus death cases and its cumulative impact also was realized, whereas coronavirus total cases on its own had a slightly lower impact. Another observation was that location-based statewise had an equivalent impact. There was not much variation depending on whether the cases were with respect to state specific. Each of them had an equivalent effect on the Bombay Stock Exchange Sensex.
So
Thank
India
you.
is actually pretty united that way.
Yes.
Yeah. So, guys, if you have liked Karandeep's presentation, I do hope you are going to go and endorse him on LinkedIn. Karandeep, what, as per you, was your largest learnings as you did the project?
So the largest learning for the project, I feel, would be in this case the research aspect of it. That is locating what are the different factors which could have affected the BSE Sensex. I felt that just when I received the title and the idea that the project would be fascinating and considering the news was just a small part of it. But when we looked at all the other factors which are considered and which can be seen in my visualization, like the GDP, then the exchange rates, the other markets. So there were so many different factors that could be seen and affecting, and how not just the COVID cases itself, but also how it is represented, the news made a large difference.
With this, Karan, let's close the session, and I hope everyone has got a very good understanding of how things have been and how you've conducted the project. With this, I'll close the session, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow.